I am beyond excited right now. I'm at the Quenn Mary. I'm here for the after party from today's swing event, and I might do a little ghost hunting while I'm here. So I'm just excited. I haven't been here since 2020, right before the lockdown, a month before the lockdown. So I haven't been here since they renovated it. So let's go inside and hopefully I'll catch something. And I should be getting my ghost box. I ordered my little ghost hunting starter kit yesterday. So I'm really excited. Sorry if I sound a little weird, but it's like really chilly and I wasn't expecting to be out here so late. So all I'm wearing is a cardigan, and I didn't bring anything else with me because I did not expect to be out at night today. So, but let's go inside and let's see what we can catch. I'll see you all soon. Bye. So excited!
First question to you today is, who here believes in ghosts? Okay, good chunk. All right, everyone, good. Out of the whole group of 30, no one raised their hand. It was very awkward. Try doing a ghost tour where no one cares. The next one is, anyone's first time on board the ship? Any first timers? Right, you have to say, anyone coming back? Anyone returning? Perfect. Bienvenue, bienvenidos, and welcome. Ik ben Potencia, Jesse Compere. I'm your host. And now, the Quenn Mary was owned and operated by the Cunard Line. From 1840 to the mid-20th century, Cunard had agreements with the British government to haul mail back and forth from Britain to America. Now, these ships were given a very special prefix, RMS, Royal Mail Ship, plans to build the largest, luxurious, and fastest ocean liners in the world began in 1926. And that was to be the Quenn Mary and our sister, the Queen Elizabeth. Now, work didn't start until December 1st, 1930, at the John Brown Shipyard in Clyde, Scotland. 4 years later, in 1934, she was pushed into the River Clyde and she celebrates her birthday. In 1936, she set sail for the first time, going from Southampton, England to Cherbourg, France, and across to New York on a regular 4 to 5 day trip. And she would sail this route back and forth for 3 years until 1939, when war was declared on Germany. And now we were a target for the Kriegsmarine and the U-boats. The Quenn Mary made a mad dash to New York, hoping for safe harbor. In 1940, she was drafted, converted into a troop ship. This beautiful liner that once carried 2,000 passengers in absolute luxury was now carrying upwards to 8,000, 10,000, 11, 12, 13, 14, and Churchill kept saying more, more, more. And we did. We set the record for the most souls ever carried on board a single ship at a whopping 16,683. With that extra weight, we sat 5 to 6 feet lower in the water. And thus, over the next 5 years, she would carry over 800,000 troops to the front lines. And with our valiant effort, we shortened the war by 2 years. In 1947, she returned to passenger service and sailed the open oceans once again. The 60s, however, things weren't looking too great for us. Rising fuel costs, low passenger costs from the Atlantic to Bermuda, into the Caribbean, into Rio de Janeiro, around South American up Cape Horn, stopping in Chile, Panama, Mexico, and Long Beach on December 9th, 57 years ago. We've been here ever since. This past September, we celebrated her 90th birthday. good for her age, huh? That's all because of you, my friends. Now, within those 31 years of sailing, we had 57 deaths. Now, these deaths are just natural causes, illnesses, sickness, heart attacks, strokes, stuff that naturally happens throughout life. Now, there is a bigger number we really don't know, though, the war service. Because on average, we were losing about 10 to 15 soldiers a day during our return trips after the war, return hospital trips. There's a bigger number we really don't know for sure. And those numbers, those deaths are still not fully accounted for, and they're still locked away in the National Archives in England and here in the United States. So there's more than 57 that I can tell you. But the stories I will tell you are from our passengers and crew. Now, my first story takes place here in the bridge, and it involves one very unique person, the captain. Now, on our maiden voyage in May of 1936, we were off with a strong start, leaving Southampton, hoping to win a new award known as the Glamour Bond, the speed record. Can we cross the Atlantic the fastest? At the helm was Commodore Edgar Theodis Britton, a 31-year veteran of the Cunard Line, very well liked with our passengers and crew. Now, unfortunately, as we arrived to New York, we got delayed by 10 hours. Thick fog. So we slowed the ship down. We arrived in New York, we tied up. The press comes aboard. They ask the Cunard Line, "Are you going to win the award? Are you going to beat the French line of Normandy? Are you going to beat the French?" And they said, "Nah, we're not focused on the wars. We're focused on comfort." Commodore Britton had other words. Of course. Why did we build her for? I will beat the French. It might not be today, but maybe next week or the week after. And he did. 2 weeks later, on the return trip to New York, we beat the French by near 30 minutes. Then we lost it, because they beat us by another 10 minutes. And then we lost it in a flip-flop for several years. Now, the morning of October 26, 1936, we're getting ready to set sail from Southampton. Commodore Britton's down below in his office getting ready for his day. As the maid walks in to serve him a nice little breakfast, she steps into his thick cabin and she finds Commodore Britton collapsed on the deck, suffering a stroke. She calls the doctor and the staff captain to come in to assist, but unfortunately, there's nothing we can do here. He's taken ashore to a hospital where he passes away hours later, succumbing to his injuries. And now he's often seen up here in the wheelhouse, shown as a man in a uniform, much like myself, but the main difference, since he was a Commodore, he had the big gold bar on his sleeves, denoting the highest ranking officer of the Cunard Line. And now that shows that he's still on board, as this was his last job as well as his second home, still maintaining a watchful eye as the ship sails the great beyond. So my friends, take a few moments to explore. If you would like to see the chart room, just go through that door and take a peek into the captain's day. And now, my friends, welcome to the officers' quarters. Now, to give you a sense of where we are, right over here on the starboard side, this was the master's cabin. This was the main man in charge of the safe operation of the ship. Now, Quenn Mary is also very unique in her own right. When she started sailing, we had a big crew, 1,200 people. That's a lot for what just one person to be in charge of. So, we had a second captain. This was the staff captain. He was also a licensed officer, also a captain, but he was in charge of managing the deck department. Because you can only imagine having to deal with this, being this guy, and you have to hear, "He took my pillow, he slept in my bunk, he took all this stuff." That's just for him. Now, over there, that's the chief engineer's office, and everywhere else would have been working for the officers. Now, my next story takes place here, in the staff captain's office. September of 1949, Senior Second Officer William E. Stark. Nobody related to Tony Stark of Tony Stark Industries, from Iron Man, the guy who made Captain America back in the first one. Just sheer coincidence. Now, Stark was up on the bridge on his watch. Now, he was invited by the staff captain and a few other junior officers to have a nice pre-dinner drink. So he came on down and sat. After waiting a while, he gets thirsty. He called the steward over and asked, "Can you find me a bottle of gin?" And the steward looked around and said, "Sure." Unfortunately, no gin in here. He went over to the starboard side, into the drink tray, nothing yet. He went into the captain's cabin, opened up his closet, and there he found a locker. And there was a bottle of gin, probably his secret stash. So the steward said, "Perfect." He went back, handed it to Stark. Stark poured himself a nice big serving of gin and tonic, and upon taking the first big gulp, something wasn't right. The burn wasn't a good burn. It was a bad one. He winced and swallowed, and what came out of his mouth next was horrifying. In a raspy voice, he said, "I think I just drank acid." The steward, a bit confused but horrified, took the bottle, opened it, and sniffed it, and he was right. What he drank was not gin, but carbon tetrachloride, a very strong cleaning agent that we use to clean our uniforms. Now, the steward said to Stark, "You can go to the ship's hospital, get your stomach pumped, you'll feel better soon." But Stark, being the average sailor, famous last words that we all say, "Nah, I'll be fine." The other officers arrived, they ate, they drank, they laughed about the situation. He went to bed, fine. The next morning, he wasn't fine. He was down below on sea deck in the ship's hospital in agony. He was dying. He was down there for 2 days until we arrived in Southampton, where he was also taken to Shortwell Hospital, where he also passed hours later, finally succumbing to his injuries. Now, this death is just a mere freak accident. No intended murder. Nothing like that, where you might assume that the captain said, "Someone might take my gin, I'm gonna poison it." No. The way it worked, he had an empty bottle and said, "I can use this again. I can have some cleaning stuff in my room on the go to clean my uniform when I need to." He put it away where no one would find it. Unfortunately, someone did, and that miscommunication had led to the death of a crew member. And his death and his spirit also came back. He's often seen up in the bridge and often wandering the hotel down below in third class and first class areas. Now, he's also seen in a very peculiar spot. The bathrooms on A deck forward. Now, more specifically, the women's restroom on port side. Weirdo? No. Now, he passed away in 1949. Port side restrooms back then, that was the men's room. He's still living in that time frame. The women's were on the starboard. But today, they're flipped. Don't ask me why, that's a management's issue. But women who go into that restroom, they often tell me and some of the other guides, when they're washing their hands, they'll see in the reflection, a man in a suit walk right by them. They'll scream, they'll call security, they'll wait for him to come out. Never a flush, the sink never turns on. They go back in to peek, he's gone. And some of the guests on my graveyards have often said, before the tour, they're down there wandering, they see men's shoes in the stalls, but the moment they open the door, they disappear. So if you're down there later tonight, keep your eyes open. So my friends, take a few moments to explore, look around. If you have any questions, I'll be hanging out right over there. Now my friends, as I mentioned earlier, we had 57 deaths throughout 31 years of sailing. The first death actually happened on our maiden voyage, only a few days into our career. On our return trip back to Southampton after we left New York, only one day out back at sea, at 2:30 in the morning, able-bodied seaman A.J. Golding was out here on starboard side sun deck, scrubbing the wood to make sure it was nice and rough for tomorrow's activities. As he gets his mop and his bucket and his tools, he moves on to the next location. He steps in the puddle he made, slips, falls back, cracks his head. That was death one. Unfortunately, there was nothing we could do to resuscitate him, as he was dead the same when other shipmates came to assist him. Now, for his contract, he had a very unique clause. When he signed on to work with the Cunard Line, he actually requested a burial at sea in the event that he was killed during the line of duty. So, we took him down to the ship's hospital, got him prepared. The next morning, with guests and crew and attendants on the fantail at the very back of the ship's chaplain gave him his last rites. They stopped the engines, sent him over into the sea, and he was one with nature again. The last death happened on our way here to Long Beach back in '67. Now, this one is more heat and nature related. Now, the ship relies on cold Atlantic sea air to go through those massive vents above us to pump air into your stateroom, the ballrooms, and everything else. Once we got towards the equator though, it might be winter up here, it's summer down there. The ship got toasty. One of our staterooms would be about 110 degrees. It was uncomfortable and unbearable. And guess what? It was worse in the engine rooms and the kitchens. Those rooms were pushing 125. A lot of our engineers, a lot of our chefs were passing out due to heat stroke as they're cooking and working and making sure the ship's sailing. And the last death was a heat-related death. A baker by the name of Lawrence was working down below when he unfortunately suffered a heat stroke and passed away hours later. He was the last burial at sea as well, as this was only a few days before we pulled into Rio de Janeiro. So my friends, we're going to be heading towards the back end of the ship. This will be one very long walk, so please do bear with me. We'll ride this way. And now my friends, welcome to the isolation ward. Now this was the secondary hospital on board the ship. The main surgery, ER, all those spaces for the doctor's office was down below on C deck at the center of the ship. Center of gravity, below the waterline. That was the area of less pitching and rolling, for if they had to do surgery, less errors. But back here, this was where you were being isolated if you were diagnosed with a contagious illness. Norovirus, influenza, anything that can be transmitted through spit, touch, breathing, you were sent back here and isolated away from the guests to prevent you from spreading that disease. Now, the space we're standing in right now, this was the men's area. This can accommodate up to 7 people. On the starboard side was the women's. The far wings were the 2 nurses' quarters. Now, you also might be wondering, well, what did we do with the bodies when we found them? Did we just leave them in their bed and just let them be? Did we put them in the morgue? What did we do? Well, we didn't have a morgue, so we had to get creative. I call this the cowboy trick. We had to preserve them in the very best way possible. And since we didn't have a morgue, the coldest place on the ship was the deep freezer on C deck aft, which is pictured right behind your head on that bulkhead. That's where we kept the meats and the ice cream. I know, she's like, what? Yes, that's where we kept them because we had to get creative. Because again, when we designed the ship, we didn't think people were going to die on a 4-day trip. Unfortunately, 57 people later, it happened. Now, the stewards had a very creative way of finding out if someone passed away. With a ship that's carrying 2,000 passengers and hundreds in each class, it's kind of hard to tell if your passenger is not showing up to dinner. But there was a way. It was during dinner services. The ice cream. One day you might have to be told only do 3 scoops per person. But the next day you have to do 10 because we have to make room for this correction in the freezer. I know I messed up, huh? Yeah. But that's a joke they actually said. Now, on top of this being the isolation ward, this was also a jail, the brig, because we had an issue with stowaways, people who would sneak on board the ship hoping for a free passage. Big no-nos back then, it's also big no-nos today. Now, if you were a stowaway, you were often given a few choices. The first is pay your ticket, and you can stay on board the ship, or you pay a partial fare, you stay back here, then you owe the rest when you arrive. Or you get off with the pilot if we catch you in time. But for 2 stowaways, they chose another option. 2 gentlemen, 2 different years, 2 different voyages, committed suicide here in this space. Now, the only information that I know that I can deduce was both were found on eastbound departures out of New York. 1930s and 1940s. You can probably assume what was the political climate at the time. It was the Depression. These gentlemen were probably escaping the country due to crime, money, family, the mob. You can name the possibilities, but we don't know why they suicide. And both were found dead here in this space. On that bulkhead right behind you, on the left-hand side has the crew members who passed away, ages, days, voyages, cause of death, and on the right-hand side are the passengers. All of those names accumulate to all 57 deaths. The passageway in the middle, that shows the stowaway list from Voyage 1 all the way to the very end. The gentlemen's names with the 2 crosses Those are the two gentlemen who committed suicide here. Now, they're not the ones that haunt the space, though. We haven't had an interaction with them since. Who do haunt the space are the nurses. They're the crew members still in here working their days. Now, how do I know? Both my friend who came here one day, as well as our ghost investigators, often interact with the nurses. My first sense was actually a couple years ago. My friend Tom was in here around 2 in the afternoon, just looking around. There's no one here. He walks into the nurses' quarters over there on the starboard side. He peeks his head in, and there he hears two women's voices in his head asking him, "What are you doing in here?" He jumps, turns around to apologize. No one. He comes around this side, still no one. That's when he pieced together. Probably just heard a ghost. So he walked into the room, apologized, because he probably walked in on two nurses getting ready for the day. Kind of creepy, but again, honest mistake. So my friends, take a few moments to explore, look around. If you have any questions, I'll be right over here. Wow.
Snows.
So you said it's okay to have
Yeah.
that on?
Yeah. I would say not the, live broadcasting, that's the,
Oh, no.
but if it's the ghost apps, you're good.
Oh.
Last one?
Yes, I do. What's your name?
So my friends, Quenn Mary has been known to be one of the most paranormally active hotels as well. Top 10 in the world. Now, that comes with the plus and minuses. The plus is you can take these ghost tours. The minus is we lose a lot of employees. We have a very high turnover. The housekeepers, they're here until almost 3 in the morning sometimes. They could be in our ballrooms vacuuming, cleaning, and they would see a shadowy figure walk right by them, something move around. The first time, it's cute. Oh my god, a ghost. But then that one employee gets that one ghost encounter and they just said, bye. They quit. And that happened to one of our employees a couple years ago within the attraction department. Around 2016, one of our leads was running into these elevators here on the port side. Now they are original, you can use them. If you already have, you notice that the doors are reflective on the inside. Now she's down below one deck on the art deck, so she's going to come up to promenade. So she runs in with a pile of paperwork. She closes the doors and faces them. As the door shuts, she sees a reflection of a lady in a blue dress standing behind her. She thought she ignored a guest, so she turns around to apologize. But no one. So she turns around, faces the reflection, and there she sees is the lady now looking over her shoulder, looking concerned but a little angry. She's standing there petrified. The elevator cannot move fast enough. As soon as the elevator gets to promenade deck, the doors open, and out comes a cold breeze rush right through her body. And here's the funny part. Right then and there on the radio, I quit. Now we still see her at the bars though. I always poke her, like, you coming back? She goes, nah. I'm surprised you're still there. I like it. But for her, that was the encounter, that was the last one. That was way too close for her taste. And that happened in those elevators. So if you're brave enough, go ahead and write it. Right. Now, this piano is semi-original. It's not original when we started sailing, but it has actually been on the Quenn Mary for quite some time. Originally, this piano came from the RMS Media, previous in our line from the 1950s. This piano was then transferred over to the Quenn Mary late 50s, early 60s, as is pictured here in our main lounge. Now, this piano has been played by several celebrities, musicians, and that's my focus, my next story. Now, over the years, guests here in the Starboard Lounge will often hear a soft melody play in the middle of the night. They'll be in there on their phones, and they hear the music, they'll turn around to give an applause, but no one. Now, it isn't that it takes one last group to touch it, but that still doesn't stop whoever this is from performing every now and then. Now, none of our records state a crew member who was a musician ever passing away on board the ship. So how and who is this? Well, we have an idea. This was probably an old crew member who, after the ship retired in '67, went back home, lived his life, and passed away peacefully. But because he loved performing for us, performing on board the ship, he came back for one nice permanent gig on board the Quenn Mary in the afterlife. Now, before the pandemic, though, he had a very unique schedule, only at night. But after we reopened in 2023, he's now on the day shift. Often heard around 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When it's nice and quiet, a few guests will hear a small melody play. They'll turn around, and again, no. Now, how do I know this one? Well, I was the first one to experience it on my afternoon tour back in April of 2023. I was doing the 2 o'clock haunting couch tour, and as I tell the story, it is dead silent. There's no hotel, there's no one yet. I tell the story, we walk into the hotel, we wrap around, and as we're crossing the lobby, all 15 of us hear 5 distinct notes come from the piano. We turn, no one. Someone did ask, that wasn't you, right? No. But congrats, because you got the tour, you got a ghost on your tour. The awkward part is, he's the first one to do it in the afternoon. So, if you're here, keep your ears open. You might get a chance to hear him tonight. Now, there's another spirit. She's tied in with the theme of music. Often seen dancing alone in the ballrooms, the bar, the restaurants, and even here in the hotel lobby. Now, she takes the appearance of a young, beautiful lady in the wedding gown. So we gave her the very creative nickname, the Lady in White. Weird, huh? And she's just seen dancing alone. And again, we don't know who she is, because a bride never passed away on board the ship. But we have an idea as to how she came about. She's not a spirit of someone, but an amalgamation, an entity. And this ties in with our war service. After World War II, the Quenn Mary served as the bride and baby shuttle, where she transported 22,000 war brides from Europe to Canada and America. Now, if you're a war bride on this trip, you have a few rules to follow. The first, your husband has to be present at the dock. The paperwork has to be correct. If immigration can prove that you're his wife and everything is met, congratulations, you start a brand new life in the USA free of charge. But if he was late, he didn't show up, the paperwork wasn't correct, you're not getting off the ship. No ifs, ands, or buts. So, the Lady in White is probably an amalgamation of war brides who got to meet her husbands and didn't. And now she wanders the ship waiting for a new one. So gentlemen, she's single, ready to mingle, she's one heck of a dance. She lives here first class, she's not living my life. The downside is, she's like 90. Right this way. This is the memory, an emotion, an essence, something that lingers in space after you live in that area. The second type is called a conscious haunting, where it's the spirit, the entity, it knows what it's doing. It's going to interact with you and either be playful or malice mannered. Now, my next story takes place in one very specific room, M119, known as the church, located starboard side, halfway down the ship. Now, it's named after Quenn Mary because he was a regular passenger on board the ship. On top of us being a troop ship, we're carrying up to 15,000 soldiers. We're his Air Force One at sea, his mobile command base. We're carrying their generals and their dignitaries. And every time he traveled, he stayed in that exact same suite. Now, in the early 2000s, a housekeeper was walking down the passageway, making sure these rooms were checked out, cleaned up, and ready to be checked in. As she approaches M119, she gets a very strong scent of cigars. So she raises the front desk and asks, is anyone staying in that room? They come back with, nope, room's vacant, no one should be in there. Okay, I think someone snuck in and they're smoking. So she walks up to the door and knocks. Room service, but no one answers. She knocks and knocks, but no one answers the door. After several minutes, she goes, I'm going in. She grabs the key, keys open the door, and enters. She goes into the foyer and into the sitting room, and there she sees is a large gentleman sitting in a chair, smoking a cigar, relaxing the afternoon away. She approached him calmly and said, sir, I'm sorry, but you're not supposed to be here. This room's vacant. And can you please put that cigar out? We're a non-smoking hotel. Well, her presence actually startled the gentleman. He jumped in the seat, got up in a big huff, put his drink down, and stared her down. After a few moments of silence, he took one puff of cigar, blew out the smoke, and vanished. And then reappeared in the painting of Sir Winston Churchill that hangs in that room. Yes, she encountered the spirit of the Prime Minister. Now here's the weird thing. He didn't die on board. So how does he come back? It's that essence, that residual memory. Because there's a rule when you pass away. When you become a ghost, and if you have a good connection, that connection with a specific location, you are able to go back and revisit that area. For Churchill, that is M119. This was the ship that made his career. A lot of stressful moments, a lot of happy moments, and victories were on board Quenn Mary. Now, you're able to rent this room out. I highly recommend it. It is one magnificent space. Original 1930s decor, breathtaking views of Long Beach on the starboard side, and of course, a roommate, the Prime Minister. Just a heads up, he sleeps in the nude. And no one will see that. So sleep at your own risk. Right this way, guys. Completed battleship Greg, carrying up to 15,000 troops. Every single inch of deck space, every inch inside the ship is packed full with soldiers. While we're out there, we have no protection, no conflict, no escorts, no one to keep watch of any submarine, because we were too big and too fast. We gained the nickname, the Grey Ghost, for our ability to blend in with the North Atlantic fog and out way fast for any German U-boat to catch up. But as we get closer to land, we're able to slow down and meet up with the Royal Navy escorts. But on this day, October 3rd, 1942, as the Quenn Mary is nearing the coast of Ireland, we're zigzagging left and right every 8 to 10 minutes to avoid a possible torpedo. As we get closer, we meet up with the Royal Navy. One ship was the HMS Curacao, a small series-class cruiser from World War I. She was tasked to stay close, stay off the starboard bow, quarter mile. That is arm's distance in ship terms. She was to match course and speed. As this massive ship sounds her whistle to come to starboard, she starts lurching to the right and trains up on a new course. Hoping that the Curacao followed orders and turned right with us, everything should have gone correctly, right? Unfortunately, no. As the officers are on the bridge wing, they look over the side to see that the Curacao turned left and was now on a collision course with us. This massive 81,000-ton liner quickly caught up with her and smashed into the Curacao. Our front force split the ship in half like butter. The bow of the Curacao came along the starboard and scraped along towards the end, while the port side came off the starboard off the port, stern off the starboard. Now the impact wasn't felt on board the ship. No one knew we actually collided with the Curacao until soldiers saw the burning wreck half a mile off the stern. Upon the initial sinking, we unfortunately killed 338 sailors that day. Only 105 survived. Now, the Quenn Mary also was under strict orders not to stop whatsoever, as we couldn't risk losing 15,000 soldiers to a U-boat out in the middle of the Atlantic. So the officers had to make a decision: risk a few hundred to save several thousands, or risk thousands to save a few. We left them behind and steamed towards Southampton. The convoy broke off and rescued the remaining sailors. And that happened. Just a few feet forward, at the very bottom of the ship at the waterline. Down below in our cargo holds, that's where the activity happens. Now we can't go in there anymore because it's due to the fact that we have to climb a nearly 80-foot ladder starting from there, straight down, vertical. It is unsafe. We don't want anyone to get hurt.
47.
Down there is where the activity happens. Now investigators
How old are you?
to go in there and send their equipment to go record. And what they find are very similar findings. The hull of the ship starts bending, breaking, and cracking. Sounds of water rushing in, and even screams and cries for help. And that is the crew of the Curacao reliving that accident every day for the past 80 years. Oh, okay. I thought there was a ghost. Now, here's the cool part. There is a spot that I take my tours at night. Fortunately, I can't go in there since there's something going on. But that was the first ghost encounter that was related to the story. And it happened when I just started working here. I was down there around midnight telling the story in absolute darkness.
You felt someone
The
touch
only
you.
light that comes through, that hatch over there, illuminating my body. As I'm telling the story, several people see a tall, shadowy figure come out of the wall and stand behind me the entire 5 minutes. Now here's the messed up part. They didn't tell me. That's why I turned the light on. And that's when someone said, "Hey, where'd your friend go?" I'm like, "Who? Where was the tall guy behind you the entire time?" It wasn't a tour guide? I'm like, "No." What big compliment. So, that's it.
That's pretty awesome that that happened to you.
I turned around because I thought it was him standing behind me. My husband. I thought there was nobody. He was so far away. And I went, oh my god, the thing is too far away for me to have bumped it. So I was like, okay, that's weird.
Now, my friends, I've been working on board the Quenn Mary for about 6 years now. I've been studying her history, her engineering aspects for about 20. I can answer almost every single question you can throw at me. But one. Which rooms are haunted? I don't know. Maybe that one is. That one is. But what about the other ones? I don't know. Because a lot of the ghost encounters, they're all random and sporadic. I can't guarantee when you stay on board the ship, you might have a ghost encounter. It's all kind of just a hit or miss. But when you stay on board the ship, though, you might have the best thing of your life, or the worst. I don't know. Depends on what you're looking for. Now, for a pilot who was staying on board back in the 1990s, the worst. He was staying on board A deck forward, just around the corner to the left. Now, he was on board during a layover, so he goes to bed. He starts dozing off. He starts falling asleep. A few moments later, he hears some rustling and noises coming from the desk next to him. In his grogginess, he opens his eyes, and there he sees a shadowy figure sitting at a desk, writing a letter. Just sitting there. He stares at it for a few more moments, he rubs his eyes, and when he opens them, that figure is now looking down at him. They both lock eyes. The pilot, thinking that he's just dreaming, ghosts are getting to me. Rolls over, goes right back to bed. A few hours later, he's woken up again, but noises come from the bathroom this time. In his grogginess, he goes, tomorrow. So he wakes up the next morning to go investigate. He goes into the bathroom, and he discovers everything in his toiletry bag was rummaged through, tossed into the toilet, the bathtub, the sink, and the trash can. Whatever was in that room with him, didn't like sharing it. That encounter only happened once, 30 years ago. We still rent that room out, not a complaint since. Now another story though. This happened last year, January 7th, 2024. An encounter in one of our hotel guests with an actual picture for evidence. She was staying on board A deck midship starboard side, so around the corner to the right, halfway down the ship. Around 2:30 in the morning, she gets this weird feeling that something wasn't right. Something was kind of off. So she wakes her mom up and says, I'm gonna take some photos. Takes her phone out, takes 5 photos with a flash. The next morning she goes through her camera roll and she actually finds something at the very last minute at the last photo. As she's zooming in, she sees a ghostly figure walking into the space. So she asks, what was it? And looking closely, a bellboy. He has the same waistcoat and he's walking in with 2 pieces of luggage. That's my deduction. So what she captured wasn't a passenger, but an employee, just like I said earlier. As these, again, we carried so many happy memories. A lot of these sailors are out at sea up to 6 months at a time away from their families, working every day for your comfort and luxury. This was a second home and a second family for these guys. They pass away, they come back for one nice gig and one last trip on the Quenn Mary. So my friends, let's wrap around to the other side. Now the Quenn Mary is divided into 3 classes, first, second, and third. Now, unlike the Titanic where they did it top to bottom, we did it differently. Here in the Cunard line, we did it by comfort. The center of the ship, top to bottom, center of gravity, glass pitching and rolling. That was the most expensive ticket. Second class was at the very back end of the ship where the isolation ward is, right back there. That was second class. Equally comfortable ride, but they had to do the vibration, the noise, the rumbling of the engines. So tolerable. Third class, however, bless their souls. They were up here in the front. The first to go up the 60-foot wave, and the first to come down.
Oh.
I know, it makes you feel like stomach turn. It was a very rough ride, and this was the cheapest ticket. And that's how we did it. Now, when we built the ship though, we thought she was too big for any wave to move. That was just the arrogance of man right there. The mast says she's too big for any wave. Boy, were we wrong. During our first venture crossing in 1936, we had 20 ambulances waiting at the dock to take us to the hospital. No deaths, but injuries, shoulders, heads, foot, as you're falling downstairs, stumbling through the passageways. We gained a very notorious nickname because of that. The Rolling Mary. With a regular 15 to 20 degree roll on either side every couple of seconds, a lot of our guests who didn't have their sea legs often stumbling and struggling to get across the ship. And this stair tower is a prime example of the bad planning. It's facing forward at a 45-degree angle that way. So you're the poor soul and the ship climbs away. This 45-degree angle stairs can go from 45 to near vertical, drop dramatically beneath you within a second, which led to a lot of injuries and 2 deaths. The first was in 1938. An elderly woman was going from M deck to A deck through those set of stairs. As she's walking down the stairs, the ship takes a pitch, the floor falls beneath her, and she's flung forward. She unfortunately smacks her head on M deck and breaks her neck. About 10 years later, a gentleman by the name of George Sidney Wayman was going from A deck to B deck, and the same thing happened again. He slipped and tumbled, suffered a stroke, and passed away minutes later. Unfortunately, there was nothing our doctors could do to resuscitate him. And now he's often seen as a shadowy figure that float upstairs. He'll make a landing, hang out for a second or two before fading away. And some guests have often heard disembodied footsteps as they're walking throughout the hotel at late night. And some would just peek around out of curiosity to see, no, but the steps continue down to the next level. And I assume that as Mr. Wayman, his spirit is still attached to this area, as this was the scene of his very untimely death. So my friends, please watch your step, right this way, and don't die.
We'll try not to.
Okay. So right over here on my left-hand side, that is our 57 Ghost Seance room. This is the former third-class dining, part of the third-class dining room. And we do host shows here weekly. These happen for about an hour and a half. And they're hosted by a paranormal apparitionist or ghost magician, where he uses magic to communicate with the spirits. Now let me take a quick peek, so I gotta make sure I got to tell you the story. Oh, she's gone. Okay, over the past several months, there were 2 dolls on that wall. Their heads would move on their own. It was creepy. But we're gonna be heading down this way, so please watch your step. Now this is where we'll be entering crew area, so please do not wander away and follow me. So my friends, what you're looking down there is towards the very bottom of the ship, towards G deck. We're roughly looking into boiler rooms 1 and 2. That deck below us is 30 feet below sea level. This was part of third class accommodations, so these windows were non-existent when we were sailing, but this was actually the funnel shaft right here that would go all the way to the very top of the ship. And we're going to quickly hold short for a moment while the investigation is trying to finish up their pool area, because they should have been out by now, but we'll see. So give me a few moments. So my friends, as we now head down towards the boiler rooms, if you look outside the windows, you see that red stripe that's on the bulkheads. That's the approximate water line to where we are right now. As we step outside, we'll approximately be 28 to 30 feet below sea level. So if you're afraid of that stuff, I'm sorry. So my friends, when we were sailing, this room was been full of pipes as well as 6 massive boilers producing steam at 700 degrees Fahrenheit. The average working temperature in here would have been 120 degrees, as well as a high-pressure system called the slow stokel. It would have made your ears pop. It feels the same way as when you're flying on an airplane, as you're raising altitude, you feel your ears pop. It's the same way. Now, this was a rough working environment for our engineers. Luckily, no one has ever passed away in here. But that doesn't stop a few spirits from coming back. Now, there's one that lives here down below. He's actually one of the ship's electricians. His office was down through that door in turbo generator room number 1. A gentleman by the name of Bernard. Now, his career lasted mid-50s, early 60s. And he basically was on board the ship for quite a few years. After he retired, he passed away, and he was just a musician. Came back. Now, I heard about his story through some of our investigators several years ago. And they told me, well, if you're ever down there, tell Bernard hi. So when I used to come down here for my engineering tours, it is pitch black. The lights are off, there is none of this on. I had to navigate through my phone to get into that boat from that booth over there from the elevator at the front. It is absolutely dark. But once I turn the light on, I head into the turbo generator room and I say, "Good morning, Bernard." I wait. 2 taps on the shoulder, telling me he's in there doing his work. So I'm going to quickly do a little bit of a walk through, explore for a bit.
Photo.
Now, my friends, my next story for the night revolves around one very specific space, the first class pool. Now, this area has been known to be one of the most paranormally active public spaces on board the ship. Not inhabited by just one spirit, but by multiple. Now, the reason why, I really don't know. I'm not a paranormal psychologist, so I can't really tell you why this room has all that energy. I'm a marine engineer. I can tell you how a ship works, can't tell you how a ghost works. But from what I've been told, it kind of goes like this. From the mother of pearl and quartz ceiling, the salt water we're sitting in right now, those 2 items are perfect conduits to allow paranormal energy to manifest, grow, and evolve. Now, contrary to what you might have seen on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and all that stuff about deaths and murders, no one's ever passed away in this room. This has the same rule as the happy memories, because of all that energy in this space, all the ghosts are attracted in this area. So over the decades, guests and crew have all seen very unique things, from apparitions of people in 1930s swimming attire, shadowy figures, people moving around the space, wet footprints, voices of people laughing, swimming, and chatting. It's just a ghost, don't worry. But that's what happened in the space. Now, you might know about one specific spirit known as Jackie, and how she was drowned and murdered here in this area. Well, upon further investigation, we really don't know if that's a real story or not. Because none of our records state a young girl of that age ever passing away in this space. But we have an idea as to how she came about. And it's a very unique way. So her story was created back in the 1980s when Walt Disney owned the ship. Back in the early 80s, they owned the Quenn Mary. They wanted to make this into a giant, cheesy, haunted house. So they created the story of Jackie and how her father drowned her in the pool. And now she haunts the space looking for a new friend. But unfortunately, that wasn't true. It never was real. But that doesn't stop her from being real. She's not a spirit of someone, but an entity, a collection of memories, the same way the Lady in White is. Everyone who believes in the stories, everyone who believes in ghosts on board the ship, all that energy is concentrated and it manifested Jackie. So, now it is your turn to come in and take a look. Now I can only let groups of about 5 at a time right now. So we're gonna do basically from here, moving our way this way. Just give me a moment. Welcome in. First 5. Don't worry, it happens. It's a fake wall, so it will.
There's someone on top. I hear voices coming from up here. Is there a way for anyone else? Crew members? Okay. I hear women's voices. Like I'm hearing from.
Who didn't get to come in yet? Y'all 3 man.
Is there a reason why it's like non-functional?
Safety. It is 7.5 feet on the shallow end, and that is way too deep for California state law. California state law is 3 foot maximum on the shallow,
Yeah.
not our 7.5 foot. Well, we also designed it to keep the water from splashing in and out, so it wasn't filled all the way to the top. There was about a 3 to 4 foot gap in between the ledge and the water. Because on our rough crossings, that water can go all the way to the edge, but still almost spill over. I have a picture if you guys want to see where it's at the water's at a 45-degree angle, and the ship's listing this way. So after the tour, if you want, I'll show it to you after later. So my friends are going to be heading down this way, so please follow me.
Yeah.
And now, my friends, my last story of the night revolves around one very specific room. The most haunted room on board the ship. B340. Now, the origins to why this room is haunted is a very unique situation. Because as I mentioned earlier, when we do have a death, we have a process. We get the body, we process, we send it to the freezer, and then when we arrive in New York or Southampton, we then hand the body over to the authorities and they will send the body over to their families. Sometimes copies of the tickets are made, copies of their passports, and they stay on the ship. Sometimes they didn't. And that's what happened with this space. In October of 1948, a gentleman was found dead in B340. That's it. That's all the log say. We couldn't find his name, his ticket, his age, where he was going to, where he was coming from, because again, once he was dead, we processed it, we gave all that paperwork back to his family. Never stayed on board the ship. So the information is kind of lost to history. Just natural occurrences of how a ship operates. Because he was just one of the deaths in the logbooks, he was just another death in the books. This was just a routine procedure. But in the 1960s, however, a young woman by the name of W.B. Berry was staying in that exact same room across the Atlantic. One evening, she goes to bed. She climbs into her bunk and pulls the sheets over herself. As she's dozing off, she feels the sheets pulled off of her nice and slowly. She wakes up, rolls it back up, goes right back to bed. A moment later, the sheets are pulled off of her faster this time, enough to startle her awake. She jumps up open and opens her eyes, and there she sees is a tall, shadowy figure standing over the bed looking down at her. She screams and cries for help by slamming the door down. The stewards who were just around the corner hear her scream, see the light turn on, they run in to assist her. In her panic, she said, "There's a man in my room. Get him out, get him out, get him out." They do a full sweep, check under the bed, under the desk, the closet, the bathroom. No one was seen going in or out B340 that entire evening. So what was it? A nightmare? Sleep paralysis? A ghost? We don't know. Just another mystery to this room. Now in the 1980s, we're here in Long Beach. We're now a standard hotel. Now back then, we weren't marketing the ship as haunted yet. Back in the 80s, the mentality was a little different. Because back then, no one wants to stay in the haunted hotel. You've seen the movies. That's where you die. And that was the stand. That was the mentality back then. So we weren't marketing the ship as haunted yet. But that still didn't stop from whatever was happening going on every night. So guests are now reporting things happening with the lights flickering, the portholes opening, closing, the faucets, the showers, the toilets are all flushing, turning on by themselves, and they'll call the front desk and ask me, "Hey, I know you're haunted, but can you turn off the special effects? I want to go to bed." The front desk, confused, will often say, "We don't have special effects. We don't have that in our rooms." "Sure you don't. Then what's happening? What's making all this happen?" "We don't know." A few words would be exchanged, a few arguments. It gets to the point that the guests would just say, "You know what, I'm done, I'm leaving, never coming back. Bye." Check out, 3 a.m. Activity got so frequent that it would happen every night for several weeks, for several years into the 1980s. Word got out that this room wasn't right. So when people are checking into the hotel, they see their room key, B340, "No thank you, I want another room." We started losing money. So early 90s, we just decided shut it down. Out of sight, out of mind. We became a storage closet for several years until 2018, we had the bright idea to reopen the space. Marketing it as B340, a paranormal experience. Now, the next scary thing about this room, in my opinion, the price tag. Oh, trust me, it scared me and I wasn't over here yet. $1,000 a night. It was expensive, $1,000 a night. And guess what? People paid thousands of dollars to stay in this room for days on end to get what was going on, to see the experience that was haunting that area. And for 2 years straight, that room was booked for a year and a half into the pandemic period. I never got a chance to take my tours in there. It was rare. Then the pandemic hit, we shut down. In 2023, we reopened the hotel, we reopened the tours, but not that room. That room was not part of my tours, the ship walks. And we would go in and explore and investigate B340. But as of September of last year, that room is now back on the hotel roster for you, my brave souls, to rent, if you're brave enough. Now don't worry, it's not $1,000, it's cheaper, $780. But still, you get the beautiful room, and of course, the ghost that haunts B340. Now, unfortunately, I do have guests staying there tonight, so if you do walk by there after the tour, please do give them the privacy. Do not kick the door, do not try to spook them. They're currently enjoying that space as what you would in the future if you do choose to stay there. So my friends, it's going to be the first room on our right, so right this way.